Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, October 8th, 2020, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the 2020 national polling averages between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. The reason why we're doing this is because Joe Biden is officially at the highest point throughout the entire election cycle. On the 538 average, they've dated the polls back to as early as March 2020. At that point in time, Joe Biden was actually not the favorite to win the Democratic primary. Following the South Carolina primary, then hit Super Tuesday, and then that's when we started having a general idea that Joe Biden would win the Democratic primary. However, at that point, it was still pretty shaky, so I think it is pretty important to note that there was polling as early as March, in fact, as early as 2017, but the averages really only mattered from April onward, and even if I was to take the March data, it would be much better for Joe Biden today. So, April was roughly when COVID-19 went into full effect. Now, we did hit a national lockdown right around March, at the end of March, but polling data didn't really get the full effects of COVID until April onwards. Throughout the entirety of the election cycle, Biden has had his highs and he's had his lows. At a certain point in time, when Donald Trump's approval rating was on the rise, he only led by 3 points on the national average. He soon expanded that to around summertime, where he hit his previous highest margin with a 9.6% lead over Donald Trump. This was pretty consistent for around a month. That was the highest point. That was a 10-point lead for an opposition candidate against an incumbent president, and everyone was saying the election would inevitably narrow up. Now, if we take a look at August, Donald Trump and Joe Biden weren't even close. Joe Biden still enjoyed a 9-point lead at certain times, and throughout the entire month of September, Joe Biden hovered around 7%. But now, following the first debate and Donald Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis, Joe Biden is at a 10-point lead. A 9.8% lead was never enjoyed by the former vice president. He never hit 9.8%. His max was 9.6%, which was still very astonishing, but you could have written it off back in July. You could have said, technically, why are we trusting this? It's so early. Let's wait. Well, we've waited. We're 4 weeks away from the election, less than that, and Donald Trump is now underwater with only 42% of the vote. Take a look at how many polls have been taken and just look around this area where Donald Trump is at 43% of the vote. And today he stands at a worse position, one of his worst positions throughout the entirety of the campaign cycle. He started off back in March with 46% of the vote, 46%. He's lost 4% of his support, and compared to the 2016 numbers, he's lost 3% of his support, and compared to the 2016 numbers, he has also lost 4%. This early out, this late in the game, in an election cycle, for this type of lead was really unheard of. Hillary Clinton peaked with a 7-point lead over Donald Trump at this point in time. This was following her debate performances and Donald Trump's approval rating dropping. Right around here was when the Comey letter released, when Comey was saying, I'm going to reopen my investigation of Hillary Clinton's email scandal. Well, nothing came up of that, but it really hurt Hillary Clinton's numbers. The reopening of it narrowed up the election, and it went from being a 7-point lead for Secretary Clinton down to a 3-point lead. Now, a 3-point lead actually did end up being mildly accurate. She won the popular vote by 2.1%, and if you think that I'm including the third-party candidates for my own reasoning, well, take a look at the two-way race. It actually proves my point even more. This is a two-way race. Howie Hawkins and Joe Jorgensen are absolutely not top-tier candidates this time around. Gary Johnson and Joe Stein are going to have phenomenally outperformed whatever data that the Libertarian Party and the Green Party get this election. I mean, the Libertarian Party only received 3% of the vote in 2016. The Green Party only received 1% of the vote. We'll definitely see less for both candidates this time around. But in a two-way race, it still explains my point. Right around her bump, she only actually led by, at most 7.1%. It pretty much matches the four-way data. That makes sense. And if we're looking at the numbers then, sure, that was right up to the election. But a 7-point lead is nowhere near a double-digit lead. Leading by 10 points when polling has been very consistent and much better than where it was 4 years ago, it's nothing to laugh at. And if you take a look at the national forecast, there's a reason why Donald Trump now has a 15% chance at victory. You cannot lose the popular vote by 10% and win the election. There is one scenario where Trump loses the popular vote by roughly 5% and still wins. And that's through narrow victories in the Rust Belt, and that would just be assuming that California, New York, Texas, all of them shift heavily to the left, even more so in in New York and California. Texas would just add because it's a very populous state. But that would just be a very weird scenario and pretty unlikely, to say the least. Now, Joe Biden has an 85% chance of victory. And honestly, I think if you support President Trump at this point and you think that he has a good chance of victory, I just want you to take a look at that 15% number, and then we can head over to South Carolina, because South Carolina voted for Mitt Romney. South Carolina voted for John McCain. It voted for George W. Bush. It voted for Bob Dole. It voted for George H.W. Bush. It voted for Ronald Reagan. So let's take a look at South Carolina. South Carolina today, where the numbers are, Joe Biden has a 15% chance of victory here. Joe Biden has as large of a chance of winning in South Carolina than Donald Trump does at winning the presidency. Now, obviously, that can change. That is very possible that this changes before the election if it does narrow up. But what we've been told by the right wing and by some on the left wing, that the election will inevitably narrow up, but where are we seeing it? The debates did not narrow it up. Countless articles saying, even myself, I said that Joe Biden only had things to lose from the debate. Now, I do think that Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis and then talking about how he wouldn't consider stimulus checks until after the election, that definitely hurt him. But the debate performance didn't help. All it could have done at that point, at least from what we were assuming, was that Joe Biden's numbers would go down. But what we saw immediately after the debate was that he jumped up. And then immediately after Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis, he jumped up even higher. So at that point in time, we were taking a look at a possible bump, maybe a 1-2% bump. I made a video talking about Biden's debate bump, but I didn't expect it to hit 9.8%. My video was about how Biden was leading by 8%. I talked about how this was a 1-2% increase from what we saw before the debate. Well, let's take a look at debate day. September 28th, Biden led by 7%. He has now increased by 3%. Taking a look at the numbers now, he has roughly 52% of the electorate. Hillary Clinton didn't even come close. She was 4% off of in the popular vote. She received 48% of the vote. Donald Trump received 46% of the vote. Today he stands at 42%. And if you don't believe the 538 numbers, and if you're fully trusting in Real Clear Politics, well, it's actually worse. I mean, look at these numbers. Look at the graph. You can see how drastically it has shifted upwards for Joe Biden. In fact, the only time where Joe Biden was at 51.6% was actually before 2020 even began. He was never even at 51.7% or 51.6%. Looking at that, this is Biden's largest lead. Right around here was Real Clear Politics' lead, but on 538, and also taking a look at the number that Biden shares in terms of the expected vote, his largest expected percent vote share throughout the entire year. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and what's the next month? November. In less than 1 month, Americans will cast their final ballots. We will probably know who the president is a month from today. Now, it's probably going to take a little bit longer, but that's why I'm saying a month from today. Today stands as the 8th of October. 5 days later, I wouldn't be surprised if that's when we get the certified election results. This is crazy. I mean, this is a lead that we would never really expect. Hillary Clinton, yes, was at 7%, but she also had an October surprise of her own that she really could not account for. But also for Donald Trump, we're not seeing October surprises come out against Joe Biden. Now, I know the Democratic campaign is expecting one, and we probably will see one. But if we don't see one by October 31st, it's a done deal. Why? Because millions of Americans have already voted. 5 million votes cast already. We're going to see 5 million more by the end of next week, possibly 10, 20 million more. Because people are casting their votes by mail. People are casting their votes in swing states. North Carolina was one of the first states to open up. Actually, the first state to open up. Maine has opened up. Susan Collins is in a competitive Senate race there. Looking at a lot of these states, Donald Trump is not only hurting himself and his chances at the presidency, but also Republicans everywhere. Whether it's in the Senate elections, they only have a 1 in 3 chance at retaining the Senate when they went in with a 53-seat majority that was expected to be retained. In the House of Representatives, the Republicans, with the same exact House map where they held it back in 2016, only have a 6% chance of winning it back. Why? Because of Donald Trump. If this was a midterm year, I honestly think Republicans would have fared better because they only fared an 8-point loss in 2018. Well, now they're expected to lose by 10% on the national average. Donald Trump is hurting the Republican Party. And if we look at the numbers, regardless of where you take your data from, they all agree. Hillary Clinton led by 3%. Biden leads by 10. 3 versus 10. In the states that it matters, Biden wins the presidency. It's not just here where Biden's doing well. Arizona, Biden's up by 5. Pennsylvania, Biden is up by 7. Wisconsin, Biden is up by 7. And Michigan, Biden is also up. And guess what? Well, actually now, 8%. I was going to say 7. It was going to be a trifecta, but it's not. It's actually higher for the former vice president. So regardless of where you look, Florida, Biden leads. Georgia, Biden leads. Ohio, Biden leads. Doesn't matter where you look. I'm not cherry picking data. Trump does lead in Iowa. Actually, no, he doesn't. Okay. I'm wrong about that. He no longer leads in Iowa. That's something new. Did not expect that. That's even worse for Trump. I was going to try to point out a position where Trump was ahead, but Texas, Biden, okay, Trump definitely is leading. I was going to say, if that went to Biden, well, that would be game over at this point. But, practically is game over, but that's not my main purpose of this video. A 9.8% lead for Biden is translating to victories across key battleground states. Well, we just saw Iowa, as a surprise to me and a surprise to many of you probably. Iowa goes to Biden. Ohio as well. North Carolina, actually, we didn't check North Carolina, but we can go ahead and check it right now. Biden is up by 2.6%, so that's pretty strong. Florida and Georgia. Did I see that Florida number correctly? Wow, a 5-point lead entering into the final month. I didn't even think I saw that correctly. I thought I just glossed over it because I knew Biden was leading. I thought it was by 2%, not by 5%. But anyways, that's besides the point. North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona. These 141 total electoral votes were all states and electoral votes that went to Donald Trump in 2016. Now we see Vice President Biden leading. President Trump has a lot of issues. He has a lot to work for. And there are 26 days until the election, 26 days until we will have the final ballots cast. And with millions of Americans expected to voting right now, we don't see anything helping Donald Trump. Because if this lead maintains for even a week, or if Biden maintains a 7-8 point lead over the next week, week and a half, 2 weeks at most, I would say the election might actually be over at that point. Because a number of independent voters and Democratic voters will be casting their votes by mail. Traditionally, in an election year, people have the final 2 weeks to make their final decisions. Why? Because the campaigners or the candidates have time to campaign, and they have time to hold in-person rallies. They have time to go to the states and say, right before the election, that's exactly what Donald Trump did. He spent the final 2 weeks in the Rust Belt in 2016, and it paid off. But what we're looking at now is that they don't have that luxury. The Trump campaign cannot all of a sudden turn this election around unless they do something significant within the next 2 weeks, because time is running out. As soon as those ballots go in, it's not as if you can call up your Secretary of State office and say, I would like my ballot back. I want to vote for Donald Trump. Now, I'm sure there are some weird scenarios where your ballot could be invalidated. You could possibly vote in person, whatever it is. Overall, those millions of Americans that have already cast their ballots and that will cast their ballots are not going to try to get their ballot back or even get their ballot back to change their vote because of a speech Donald Trump gave on November 1st or November 2nd. Because that's what happened in 2016. The Trump campaign had 5 extra days than they do this time around. They had up till November 8th, and they went to the Rust Belt states. CNN went to a lot of those rallies, and they were talking to a number of previous Clinton voters at Trump rallies and asking, why are you here? Well, they said, I remember this vividly. She said, I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for. I don't want to face scrutiny from my friends. You can show my face on the TV screen. She said she went in voting for Hillary Clinton, but she wasn't able to return her ballot. She forgot. So she went to a Donald Trump rally, and she spoke, and she heard to Donald Trump Jr. And his speech, and he said that she was way more trusting in President Trump, but that she wouldn't announce who she was voting for. Despite her having Hillary Clinton initially on that absentee ballot, she decided against it, I'm assuming, because she said that she wouldn't announce who she was voting for. So if she was originally proud of voting for Hillary Clinton, I would be surprised if she was still voting for her. But I'm sure that was something that was very common amongst a number of independent voters in Michigan in 2016. They were solid with Clinton originally, and then what they proved to us was that Donald Trump's last-minute campaign techniques really paid off. But they won't pay off this time because there won't be last-minute campaign techniques. The only people that are going to Trump rallies are not really independent voters. They're solid Trump supporters. Because COVID-19 is a very real threat. And while President Trump may have beaten it, 210,000 Americans have not. And I don't think that's me being political about this issue. I know people personally within my family who have died of COVID-19. And I think that it is very important that people do take it as a very serious threat. That's the exact reason why the American public is going to be casting their ballots, maybe not majority by mail, but maybe 30-40%, which we're going to see possibly 50-60 million votes cast by mail. And if they're cast by mail, people are already worrying about the USPS slowing down. They're going to send in their mail-in ballots as soon as possible, or they're going to drop them off early, which means Donald Trump cannot afford to even be in a climate where he's down 5%, much less 7%, and even more, much less 10% as it stands today. So Joe Biden is riding high. He should be very happy, especially after Kamala Harris's debate performance last night. Mike Pence is a very good speaker, very eloquent debater, but I think he really met his match last night. In 2016, you definitely could not say the same. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord link for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2020 election predictions if you want to see, again, where I think the race stands today. I'm going to be making another video in a couple of days. I'm making them every week until the election just to see how the electoral map evolves and changes. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.